Hey guys, and welcome to another episode of Drag Illustrated's The Racing Business with me, Jason Dukes. We really appreciate you guys being here for another week of inspiration, education, just business knowledge, advice, and also some entertainment too, right? Why not? Um, as always, we're brought to you by Drag Illustrated. Drag Illustrated helps us put this whole thing on. Also, Racers Club. You can go get your really cool Racers Club stuff at racers.club. That's actually a website. There's no like .com, .net, whatever, just racers.club. And then also Captain's Chair Coaching, because that's how I make my money, just captains-chair.com. PSA. I always like to start our shows with a little bit of PSA. I'll just say these words. You guys do whatever you want to do. Physical, mammogram, colonoscopy, endoscopy, blood pressure test, diabetes test, PSA, sleep tests. We need you guys to stay alive in order for us to have a great racing business. So, an industry. So most of the time on the show, we either have legends in making or legends. This person's probably going to hate that I'm calling him a legend, but he really is a legend. I grew up, this sort of gives you my age, but my age of watching NHRA was Dave Schultz versus John Myers in Pro Stock Bike. And that was one of the rivalries that I got hooked on still to this day. Probably my three favorite bikes are the El Bandito Tequila bike with the chrome, the Winston bike with the chrome, obviously just the Star Racing, just normal livery, and then the U.S. Army bikes were pretty bad cool too. But either way, our guest this week is George Bryce. I know you generally hear him as a couple, George and Jackie, but we have George on the show, a legend, pro stock, all motorcycle, and then Star Racing, the business in the background. So here, want to bring in our guest, Mr. George Bryce. Mr. Bryce, how you doing, sir?
Great, wonderful. I'm glad to be here. I put a little trophies back here so I could at least feel a little bit at home there.
Well, that's been your home at Victory Lane and holding some trophies.
It's so good to say how many we've won and how good our career has been. But, people don't remember first round losses. The one when we went to California and had engine trouble first round and, all that kind of stuff. We don't remember those. But these are when times went exactly right. and they're not representative of the effort in general.
Yeah, well, this show is an effort in general show. This is not a hey, look, it's so easy. Here are the 2 steps and you'll be successful all the time. This is like, let's talk about the good times, the bad times, and all the times. But while you speak of the trophies, can you just list off just a rattle of accomplishments? Like what are all the things that George and Jackie and Star Racing achieved?
I guess first of all, when we became in focus was the NHRA, but there was a lot of behind that happened to get it to that good. We didn't just show up at the NHRA races and started doing good. I mean, the International Drag Bike Association before John Myers, when Jackie and I were together, we raced in a class called the Funny Bike class, and I won world championship in 3 years with that. We did get a chance to go to the U.S. Nationals in 1984, and that kind of started it. Funny Bike wasn't a class, but we had 8 bikes in that category as a sideshow to the U.S. Nationals, and we ended up winning and got to meet the Winston people, and we really started right there. I think it was there was probably 100 wins off of the NHRA focus. I mean, we IDBA and ProStar and Drag Bike and all these other organizations, we were really doing well in that. And that was our fishbowl. We were doing good in that fishbowl. And if you were looked inside that, you knew who we were. But when we showed up at the NHRA races, that introduced us to 30,000 new people and TV and all that kind of stuff. So I was actually in the winner's circle with both Winston trophy girls, in 1984. Jackie and all of us, we were all there, and we got to meet Deb Britson and all these other guys, and it was crazy. So I decided I wanted to go back. So I sold the funny bike and I bought a pro stock bike. And I think there were 34 pro stock bikes in 1985 that entered in the U.S. Nationals. And it wasn't a category then. But I finished. Well, I didn't finish. I did D&Q'd. So I went, in 1 year, I went from hero to zero. I ran, I think it was 18th qualifier. And I was a little bit disappointed. And I went and I said, you know what, I got to do good at this, and we got to do better. So we went to work on the pro stocker, and we figured out how to do good. 1987, we did better. I think I got number 3 in the world in 88, and then I met John Myers, and he came over to the shop one Saturday, and he wanted to show me how to put a 2-step on it, how he would do it, because he was a top gas champion. And that was an 820 class and a heads up sportsman class right behind pro stock. It was the next thing you would do. And he came over and told me what to do. And when I had 300 foot of concrete at the shop. I had a burnout pit and all that stuff.
At the shop.
Yeah. And we would do a burnout and stage, and then we would take off. I even had 60-foot clocks at my shop. And and this was in 87, 88, 89. I mean, we were really committed to improving, our force. But the rest of the guys that were in pro stock, there weren't any really doing it for a living. Terry Vance was pretty much a professional, a few other guys, but most of them were good hobbyists, and it's hard to say hobbyist now with the Matt Smith and versus Steve Johnson, hobbyist and professional, that was a different time. But we were really focused on it. And I did pretty good on the bike, and John said, no, let me show you. And he got on the bike, and he said, wow. I said, daggone, how you do that? And he says, I don't know. I'll just do it. And I said, well, let's go to the track and let's try you. Let's go to Warner Robins Dragway, and you ride my bike, and I'll see how it looks. And took 2 or 3 runs, and he was running the record. And I said, wow, I was the weakest link, and John was strong. And so we started together in 89, and we finished number 2 in the world. And then everything from there is history.
Yeah. So I sort of have, I have a bunch of questions there. One question you said is that one question that I have is that you said you met the Winston people, and then it spurred your idea to go on to the U.S. Nationals, and I think I heard that correctly. But was it specifically people from Winston or like NHRA people?
Oh man, both. I remember sitting in the staging lanes on Friday at U.S. Nationals, and there was a big guy. It was the staging lane director, and he had a big cowboy hat and he had a white suit, and he would start talking on the microphone, and he would say, all right, let's see. And he would look at this class, and he would look at this class, stock, super stock, comp eliminator, the bikes, and we would put our helmets on and our gloves and get ready. And then he'd go right by us to super stock. And I said, oh man, I sat all day long in the staging lanes all day and didn't make a pass all day. And me and 30 bikes, and I said, wow, we were just, we were like something you sweep under the rug. And if you have time, we'll send them through. And if we look real sad, he would pick us and stuff like that. But, if we didn't get a schedule, so there was no schedule. So in 1989, we became, I think it was Castrol. Castrol adopted us as a category, and we got a little bit of a schedule. It was somewhat permanent, but then, but when Winston picked our category as a professional category and made us, all of us, important to NHRA, we were on the schedule. We would go every time John Force would go. We go every time John. Warren Johnson would go and Lee Shepard would go. We would go the same time they would go.
Yeah. And I bring that up just because we had Colbert Seagraves on talking about Winston and his dad, and and then all the other stuff that Colbert went on to get into. But we talked like just to sort of time capsule it for some of the people even younger than me of not really understanding like historically what a series sponsor has meant. Like, I know nowadays, they're series sponsors and it's just like, oh, it's a company. They're looking for a return and they put their name on the thing and then that's sort of it. And it's like, well, the Winston guys were out there like pounding the pavement, recruiting racers, doing.
Man, that was so good. They would have golf tournament on Wednesday, and they would give a Wally to whoever won the golf tournament. And then Thursday they would have race of champions, and they would have all heroes would go out with the Firebirds, and they would have the Winston potential clients come and race the Firebirds. And we did it all day Thursday, and they had a suite in the tower, and they were just, they just had 50 people they were coercing or advertising, trying to win over. They had these. I didn't care about or get into the cigarettes at all, but what their goal is to win out over the Marlboro Man. Anything they could do to beat the Marlboro Man. But they had the C-store. The C-store people would come out. The guys that had the grocery stores and the guys that had the convenience stores. That's who they came as their clients.
Yeah.
And they just were rocking the show. They showed the world how to implement a sponsorship.
Yeah. Guys, if you're watching, and it's in season 1, if you haven't watched the Colbert Seagraves episode, please go back and watch it. It'll just give you an amazing history of just series sponsorship and also NHRA. So 300 feet of concrete at the shop there. You got to give us the history of that. Like it didn't just appear. Like, what's the history of that?
Well, we planned on a launch pad. We had all along, because that was most important in our drag racing. Some people go to the wind tunnel and all that to improve their performance, but where the ET is made is the first 60 feet. So we really focused on that weekly, and this pad that we had specially laid, you couldn't spend the time.
I'm not laughing because it's funny. I'm laughing because of the commitment, and a lot of people don't really get what it takes. And it's like, that's why we were talking about you every week in every race, because you had a 300 feet of concrete.
Yeah. And it went on all hours. I had spotlights on the side of my building, so I could really go at night. So if in the summertime we could 60 foot at night, and if it was really hot, and in the winter time we could do it in the daytime. And my neighbor, the two neighbors, one was a big fan on the right side of me, and then across the street there was a guy that had probably 100 employees, and he came out there and was watching me, and I'd slide the bike sideways and trying to stop before I ran in the ditch across the road over to his place. And he said, "You know what, George?" He said, "If you buy the pipe, I'll put a driveway extension so you can run off into my yard there." And so he paved the extension of my driveway across the street, and our driveways didn't line up; they were offset. So he got his driveway to line up with mine, so I had shut down area, and that really was good. I use all the low gear, and then coast over into his. And we were on a one-way, a dead end street, so we'd have an employee stand at the road, make sure no trucks were coming, but we'd just shoot across the highway there. And we even had 60-foot nationals at my shop. Yeah, that's what we called it. But we had all the guys would come out. They would set up a cooler full of beer, and we would foot race who could go the fastest on 60 foot. We would do pickup truck racing, who could go the fastest, and our street cars and everything. And a lot of people don't remember, but I ran a pro stock car in '93 and '94, and we ran Gary Brown's Texaco Havoline, the white and black Oldsmobile. We built his engines and all this stuff, and he was doing good. And Earl Snyder and I bought a Don Ness Lumina, and I would learn to drive it right there. I would do my burnouts, I'd shift the link toe, and then I'd stage and leave. So when I got to go finally to run it at the races, I kind of looked like a veteran instead of a rookie with the prototype. So that was really good to learn.
Wow. Well, we're going to have to get into that. My last question from the first round of story is, so John Meyer comes in and you put him on the bike and he's better than you. Like, tell the audience about the, as a business owner, as a team owner, but also as a racer, like the process of like even admitting that, man, this guy's better than me, and just letting him go with it. Like, what's that like?
Well, I think that a lot of the companies, and there still happens today. I think the guy that owns the bike wants to ride it. All of us guys have ego, and it's hard. It's hard for you to put the business in front of the ego. It's mostly the ego drives the business, and I got a lot of bad information from my. I guess it was my competition in business. The guys would say, "Hey, you need to ride a bike. You're the star. You'll finish number 4. That's George Bryce. Finish number 5. That's George Bryce." Well, I had in my mind I wanted to win the trophy, so I would be doing whatever we could to our program to let Star win the program, not George Bryce. So that at that time, around 1990 or 91, I started to separate what was my own wants and needs versus the company, and I wanted the company to grow. So I had to fix the leaks. I mean, it's hard for me to say I was a leak, but I was better standing there, making the program better, finding horsepower, and let John drive. And he was really good at driving. And in Indy in 1990, that was his first time he went to Indy, and it was a new Suzuki, brand new, and I had everything specially built, custom frame. I had polished tubing inside the tubing. I mean, it was really nice. Cosmo Specialties built the frame, and he called it the Gucci frame, and it was the best one he ever did, and he started selling them later. But we also, it was the first year we put the fairing on John Meyer's bike. It had a really good, windscreen setup, and it was really nice bike. But at our first U.S. Nationals, he went, we ran across the scales and he was 25 pounds light. I said, wow. I mean, that's a lot on a motorcycle. I said, no wonder you went fast at Warner Robins. We were 25 pounds light. So we started borrowing all the lead we could from car racers, motorcycle racers. And we put 25 pounds on the bike, went and made first round of qualifying. And we set the record. Qualified number 1, set the record. And I couldn't believe it. It's the first time we ever qualified on the pole. And that was crazy. That was good.
Yeah. So tell us about the. Sorry. Yeah. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Yep. Tell us about the Star Racing side of it. Tell us about the Star Racing side. Like everything we talked about the racing side, but as you're doing the racing side, there's Star Racing in the background or the foreground. Like what was happening on the business side? Like what were you guys working on the business side during that time?
Well, we used our racing bike as a model for what we could do. And we really sold lots of engine packages. There were probably 10 or 12 of us at the time working at Star Racing full time. We had toll-free lines. We had parts house. We'd mail order parts everywhere. There are a lot of people going to watch this were customers. We had, 1,000 different part numbers, and it was really kind of complicated for Jackie where we went into. But we started Star Racing in 1979. And the first year, I remember we got we sold an inner tube for a Yamaha. Then I had the inner tube on the shelf, and this guy came in the store and he said, "Hey, I want to buy that inner tube. I got $2.75." And Jackie and I hightailed it to Hardee's, and we got a cheeseburger and a Coke and 2 straws, and we split it. So, and we thought we had it made. We got the cheeseburger, and I mean, we could actually eat while we go. And it was really, really scary time. But we thought we had it made. I mean, really. And then as it went further and further and further, we put all the money and all the time we had in the bike for John to race at Indy. We were going all out, and I ran out of money in August before U.S. Nationals, and I told Jackie, I mean, we don't have any money. We're going to go for broke. If something breaks on the motorcycle, that'll probably do us in. If we win, we'll probably, get a little breath of a life. And Jackie's mom and dad heard me, and they were talking about, well, how about if we loan you $12,000, put in the checking account so you can go and feel at ease that you'll be okay no matter what. And so we did, and we went, and a lot of amazing things happened at that U.S. Nationals 1980. And I wanted, if you have a minute, I want to tell you about how that all went.
Tell us.
All right. So we went to Indy, and we fought the lead. We got the lead all figured out. We went on this track, and we were in the staging lanes, and there were probably 30 bikes waiting in line, and we knew what time we were going to run. And there's this little short, chubby guy comes walking down the lane, and he was real jolly looking guy. He had a little red hat, and he was walking along, and he was looking at the bikes, stand back from the bikes, and he'd look, and he came over. He said, "Hey, that's a nice motorcycle. Is it new?" I said, "Brand new, first day, first time the sun's ever shone on it." He said, "What kind of wax do you use?" And I said, "I don't know, quick wax, turtle wax, I don't care." He said, "Well, have I ever heard of the wax shop?" And I said, "No, I don't." He said, "Man, let me show you." He got some wax. I said, whoa, that bike was perfect. He said,
"Don't touch it."
Yeah. He said, "It won't hurt it." So he showed me a little spot, and I said, "Well, it was pretty shiny before. It might be shinier now." And he said, "Can you outrun the Eagle One bike?" And I said, "The what?" And he said, "That bike over there." And he pointed to the black Eagle One Kawasaki that Dave Schultz was racing. And I said, "Oh yeah, we can outrun him." And he said, "Oh yeah, you can?" I said, "Shoot you." He said, "Well, if you can run beside him and beat him, I'll give you $500. And I said, "Shoot, you talking about now qualifying or what?" He said, "Anytime." And I said, "Oh man." I started breaking in line and in front of you, and we put the bike right beside Dave Schultz's bike. And John, he asked me, he says, "Hey George," he said, why are we running Dave?" And I said, "Don't worry about it. You got to beat him eventually to win, So we went out there, and he walked the dog on and turned the wind light on. The guy was so excited and so happy. This guy, he counted off $500, and he gave me the money. And I said, "Doggone, that's good." And he was so excited. He said, "Anytime you can outrun an Eagle One bike, I'll give you $500. And so I said, "Really?" And he said, "Yeah." I said, "Man, we paired against Dave every time, and we beat 4 times in qualifying." And I got my $2,000, and then the amazing thing that was happening was John would bump the record, the world's record, 100th or 200 every qualifying pass. And we went into eliminations pretty far, number one, and we didn't have to run Dave till the finals. And Wes, let's see, what was his name? Jess Winters. That's the guy that owned the wax shop. He came over to me before the final, and he said, "I've given you some money this weekend, but you've really made me a happy man." He said, "Put these wax shop decals on it and all that stuff. And if you win the race on Monday, I'll give you $2,000. And I mean, this is like $4,000, and that's like over 10,000 now, And I was pretty amazed. Anyway, so we went and won the race. Went to Winner's Circle, did the whole 9 yards at Indy, and it was John's first win. He was so excited. And Jess Winters started with us. He said, "Man, I want to give you money next year. I want to be full sponsorship." And then by the third year, He was talking to Jackie one time in the press conference. I mean, the press suite, and he said, "I got $75,000 this year. What should I do with it?" And Jackie said, "Spread it out amongst the crowd." And I said, "I mean, the competitors." And I wasn't listening to this. And I said, "Well, Jackie, you're going to give our $75,000 to everybody? What is wrong with you?" And she said, "No, I think it should be for everybody." So he came up with a year-long qualifying race that got points to go in the Wax Shop Dash. And that was the winning of the Wax Shop Dash. And John Myers won that for 4 times. And it was funny. Dave Schultz couldn't win that race. And we had you were right about the rivalry. I was doing all I could to make it worse, and he was beating us and outrunning us, and he was all he could do to make it worse, But we saw each other as the worthy adversary that we were, But to finish the story about Indy, a guy from Ohio, a little dude he came up to me. He said, "I'm gonna buy that bike." And I said, "No, you're not." He said, "I'm gonna buy that bike." I said, "No, man, this bike is worth something to me." He says, "I'm gonna buy the bike." So he came over to my trailer with a bag, and he said, "I'm gonna buy your bike right now." And I said, he opened the bag, and it was $75,000 cash. I mean, he showed me $75,000. He said, "I'm gonna buy that bike right now." And I said, golly. I mean, a bike we were selling for 25, 30, and that was big money. That would have done much for me. But I thought about duplicating it, how soon I could duplicate it. It would probably take 6 months. I told him, I said, "You know what, man, you can't afford it." And he said, "What? You're crazy." And he took money and left. But John Myers qualified number 1 13 times in all venues of racing in a row after that day.
Wow.
On that bike. IDBA, wow. Drag, NHRA. It was crazy. And we won the championship.
Yeah. Wow.
So that was the bike that started loaning us the money to get to Indy.
Yeah. Wow. And then, as I said, I was a fan during that time, and you guys won a bunch of stuff, and then the Myers era, I guess, ended, and then the Angelle thing. Can you tell us a little bit about that transition of going from one great and building a legend in the making?
Well, our first idea when we brought her on for a year, and she understood it, and it was her goal to create a faster machine for John Myers. She was also a big John Myers fan. They got to be like brothers and sisters. She would do whatever she could to help him. He would do what he could to help her. And she had his spare bike. And when the first race she entered was Denver, and she qualified 4th. And John, he got put out in the semis, and Angelle, Dave Schultz beat her in the semis, and that was historical. I mean, she made it to the semis in her first national event, qualified 4th in her first national event. She was the first motorcycle to go in the 7s at Denver because she was on the rotation to hit the track a little sooner than the rest of them did for that qualifying session. But the key for her very first race was Mickey Nutting and his wife were on the I forgot the interstate that runs along the Bandamere Dragway.
15 or something?
Yeah, something like that. And they drove by the track and said, "Wow, look how that mountain." And the guy says, "Yeah, that's our team Winston's up there. And there's a Jumbotron." She said, I want to go. So his wife talked him into going back to the track. They got to the gate. They didn't have credentials. They got Deb Britson to come in the golf cart, pick them up, take them to the suite, and they sat them down with a cocktail over the tower when Angelle rolled out for her first Friday night session. And they had the cameras on the starting line, and they had them handheld, and she had a hot pink helmet. Her eyes were all made up, and they stuck the camera in her face, and it was on the Jumbotron. And she said, "Oh my gosh," Miss Nutting, who's that? I want to meet her. I want to meet her. And so Deb Bryson said, okay, we'll meet her. And she took off down the track. The crowd erupted. They went crazy. She says, oh my gosh, that's a star. That's a star. So the Winston people didn't know anything about her. And Deb brought Mickey Nutting and her and his wife down to our pit and introduced us. And they got so excited, and their guy reached in his pocket and he pulled out a business card. He was president of new business development. He wasn't in drag racing, and he gave me his card. And he said, "Hey man, if you ever need help or whatever you want to do, man, we'd like to help." So I put that in my pocket, and I remember that night. This is history now. I remember that night I was in the motel room, and it was funny. He tracked me down somehow to my motel room because we didn't have cell phones, and it was Bob Fry on the call. He calls me on my motel phone and he says, "Hey George, I saw it going down. I saw Mickey come by and saw you." He said, "And don't let the opportunity pass you by, because they were really impressed. They're talking about you guys this morning at the airport." And I said, "Oh, okay, that's good news." So I kind of washed it back a little bit, and then I got asked to be in a golf tournament in the next race, and I got to meet some Winston guys, and they wanted to know all about her. And then the next time I got to go to a golf tournament, we got her to come with me while we played golf, and she ended up being like a cart girl. She was like the drinks girl, and she was a lot of fun. She hit. All the guys hit them up just right. They were excited. She helped everybody get their drinks. We let her make some shots, and they said, "Man, we got." And it really was just fate. It was just fate that we put her on the bike at that race that we found Winston people. So anyway, Deb came to Deb Britson came to our truck at another race, and they said, "Hey, you going to Pomona?" "Oh yeah, we're going to Pomona." I mean, John's going to get a world champion. I mean, yeah, we were going to get a number 2 plate or something. And she said, "Well, make sure you bring nice clothes for John, for Angelle, and the whole crew. Make sure, because we're going to take you to dinner." And I said, "Oh wow!" Winston people, they've never asked me to go to dinner, So I was so excited. Everybody go to the rental place and get our stuff. So at Pomona, they must have bought this whole Italian restaurant. I forgot the name of it. It was over by Ontario Airport, but they shut the whole place down. We probably had 40 guests, and we all had a great time there. And they told us that they were interested in doing something with us next year, and they would be in touch. Man, and then their marketing team took over. They came in and they said, "Okay, we want John. You're going to race at the drag bike finals in Gainesville. That was not NHRA, nothing. And we want Angelle to race this bike and paint in weird colors and put a question mark on it on the bike and put more to come." And we ran in November and December with her on that bike, and it just said "more to come." And that generated a bunch of stuff for the next year. And I guess John, when the big Winston contract, well, that was close call. You remember the close call phone card?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I did.
John was fully outfitted, fully sponsored. Angelle was fully outfitted, fully sponsored. And I didn't realize it at the time, but that man that did that deal. He got Brett Bodine, he got Jim Head, he got I guess there was the guy that ran the Miss Budweiser hydroplane.
Yeah.
Chip
big boat. Yeah, Chip Hanauer.
Yeah. Yes, that's exactly right. And we all became a team, and we were the monster team, the mega team. And the guy turned into a flake. The guy that owned that thing, and it was a scam. And he had the Winston people had a budget put together for him. He gave them a budget, and then all the big guys sold the stock that they had gotten for a dime or a penny, and they all made money on it. But that went down the drain. And I said, "Golly!" And we were left out. We were left out the next year. So that lasted almost a season. Didn't last the whole season, but almost a season. So we were at Rockingham at the Winston Invitational the next year. John Myers, Angelle, unsponsored, and Lee Pinnell, I guess, I don't remember his name, Lee something, from Winston. He came by my trailer and he was just checking on us. How y'all doing? Everything? How you been? What's going on? I told him we were struggling because we had the close call deal, and I held them responsible for how that went because I got a 3-year contract, and I want you to help me honor that some kind of way. Is there something you can do? And he said, "Oh, I don't think we can do anything with you because there's a lot of politics." Well, I kind of leaned on him really, really hard, and I'm not say exactly the words, but we ended up with a small Winston sponsorship. Starting in Virginia of that year, like Angelle got Leather's paint job, and then they did the whole 18-wheeler in 13 days. They had an amazing marketing team. They did the 18-wheeler went from black to red and white, uniforms, her leathers, the bike, 13 days. They knocked it out of the park. And it left John, the blue and yellow bike, but Angelle was the Winston, and we were pitted together. They said, "Oh no, we want John. We still want John, but we got to color Angelle in the Winston, and we like John, and we really love John, and we want to do with John." Well, all of his buddies that were competitors, they said, they were scheming up with John. They said, "It's not fair for George and Angelle get the Winston, and you get left out. You need to quit the team and start your own team." And he did. He quit, and he won 33 national events with us prior, and he had won 3 world championships with us, and the Pro Star Championship and the IDBA Championship. He won a lot of championships, and probably 50 races total. We separated on really good terms. The fans, they had opinions. The competitors had opinions, but John and I kept it clean, and we were real friendly. And then he was killed in a street bike accident, only probably 8 weeks after he left, right. And that was history. But that's what happened with that deal. Well, and then go ahead.
Oh, I said I have another question about history, and also probably some credit to give to you, and this may just be my version of history or how I saw it go down, but like, in 2024, if there's a open race seat or some announcement and it's like, "Oh, we got this female driver," and like, I don't even think anyone would bat an eye. It's just like, okay, there's female driver, like, okay, like, you know what I mean? But in I don't know the years that you're talking about, but I remember, like Angelle was like, that was huge at the time, like huge. Like, I don't, if you're younger than me and watching this show, like it's my responsibility to let you know, like, what a big deal that was. Like, it was like, wait, you're what? Like, who, what? Like, I mean, I remember each of her runs, like, that, they would talk about, like, like comparisons of her size to the bike, and and then even some of the racers are like, "Well, it's unfair, we can't even get that small." But like, one, I guess, for like history books and all that stuff, like, assuming that I have history correct, like, thank you for being one of the pioneers of of like breaking that barrier, and just making it no big deal. But what was that? I mean, the way you tell the story, it seems like it wasn't even a thing.
The thing that was amazing about it was I was teaching Frank Hawley's drag racing school for 23 years of pro stock motorcycles. I had classes, 4 or 5 classes a year. She signed up for it. She was too little and too light to qualify, like, have a sign at the where shorter than this on this ride, when you're at the fair. And that was, she couldn't meet the criteria, so she stand on her toes and bulk up lifting weights, and we had rules. She was 20 pounds short of who was able to ride the motorcycle. So she wrote me 3 letters. She wrote Frank Hawley letters. She finally called the secretary at Frank Hawley's school, the girl that was answering the phone, her name was Felicia. And she really made friends with Felicia. She would call Felicia and talk to her every time I had a school, and she wasn't invited because she was too little, too light, and they got to be friends. And so Felicia would come out and see us at, when we were running at the track, and she would just walk out the office to take a break, and she'd say, "Hey, George, that girl calls me, man. What can I do? What can I tell her?" And I says, "Tell her to grow up, man. I don't know. She and I mean, she was literally the thing that wouldn't go away. She wouldn't go away, and she finally wrote a letter to me, and she signed it. It was crazy. I still have it around here somewhere, and I'll show it to you one day. But she, in 1996, she wrote me this letter, and she says, "I'm a little small. I'm working out. I've been riding my bike a little bit. I will be pro stock motorcycle world champion, but you got to give me a start." And she signed it, NHRA pro stock motorcycle champion, Angelle. She signed the letter. And I said, I mean, we laughed. I showed it to Frank. I said, "Frank, talking about presumptuous. I mean, first of all, she don't have the money. Second of all, she don't know how. Third, she ain't nobody going to let her ride a bike." So finally, the girl, Felicia, called me and says, "George, please, look, I got Frank to agree. She'll pay full tilt. Just let her come to the next school, and she'll sign any release or that she has to." She said, "If you don't think that she can do it, you're not liable." And I said, okay, let her come. I remember that school. It was that year of 96, and I came in the classroom, and there was a girl, only girl, 7 men, it's only girl. And I remember she had a Batman t-shirt, an army camo hat pulled down over her eyes, and she was just plain Jane, and I didn't pay any attention to her. And so when it was her turn to get on the bike, she did the burnout. This thing had a 9-inch tire on the back, like a stock automatic car. I mean, it had a tire on the school bikes, and it was bigger than her. And so she got in the water and she did the burnout. She kept the RPM at about 10,000. When it got high, she lifted. When she came out of the water and it dried up, she put more throttle to it. And it was kind of like, oh my God, she has perfect control. That was an accident. And I had this thing they used to have to do. They used to have to put it on the throttle full stop and then bang the clutch. And that was called a dry hop. Had to pull the clutch back in and then shut it down and come to a stop. And she could nail the dry hops. I said, oh my gosh, I couldn't believe she could do that. And so then when it was time for her to take off, she drove it. She was lights out better than everybody else at that point. As we got further in the class, started going further down the track a little bit, she didn't know how to control it. It would go off to the right, she'd shut it off. It'd go off to the left, she'd shut it off. And the second day of our class, we have 2 days, she had her hair curled, makeup on, she had a flowery print on the shirt, and I said, oh my. And I felt so guilty about realizing that she was a beautiful girl and she could ride the motorcycle, the part I thought was the hardest. And I ignored her to make sure that I didn't cheat the paying customers that were there. So I ignored her for the event, the rest of the event. And I helped her do a little bit better and a little bit better. And she really did good. Well, I didn't know it, but she cried all the way home. She followed the Star Racing 18-wheeler up 75 in her rent-a-car, tagged in right behind me, crying and sobbing and crying and sobbing. And when she had to take I-10 to go towards Louisiana and we went north to Georgia, she said, well, there they go. You know, that's the last I'll ever see them. And about 2 weeks later, I was thinking at home, man, that girl could do it. She could do it. She needed help steering. She needed help controlling the bike. But man, I called her up and I left a voicemail on her phone at her house. And she said that when she got off work, she was a nursing student. She got off work and she played the message, and she started screaming, running around the house. She took the phone. She took the phone out of the wall and carried it to her mama's and plugged it in so she could hear the message. And she said, it would have been better if Val Kilmer had to call me, man. She said this. And so
that was the first mobile phone. She literally took the phone and just the old answer machine.
Yeah, they didn't. You young guys don't remember that day. Yeah, you had to jerk the cord out of the house and take it to your mama, and let her hear the message. Her daddy, that's all right. He's like blowing smoke. He just wants another $2,000, and and she had to listen to all the yang, from everybody was saying he just wants $2,000 more. No, he thinks he can help me. He thinks he can help me. So she came to the school 5 times.
Wow.
She literally wasn't going to go away. And she set all the records, all the school records. She won me and Jackie over. Jackie and I were like, okay, if she's a pretty girl and she can do it, we can fix her up. We can patch it up. We can coach her, teach her. We can make something out of it. And this might be our ticket. And that was, I'm putting the cart before the horse, but that's what was happening 6 months prior to her showing up to Denver. We spent 6 months on her running John's. We probably made 100 passes off record in test session, nobody watching, at Silver Dollar and US 19 Dragway, where she was just a regular. She would come. As a matter of fact, I went over and got her and told her if she was going to be committed to it and do it, she needed to leave her house and move to Georgia and get an apartment and live in Americus, Georgia, so we would have access with her every day. And she learned how to cut lights, and she learned how to do this. She had everything down pat too. She went to her 4th event, and she won first place and set the national records, beat Dave Schultz in the finals. And that was at Reading. And so we prepared her, tremendously prepared. And that's what people don't do now, is they prepare for winning like we used to back then. So
yeah,
that was just an idea.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks for sharing that story. I was listening to the Dale Jr. podcast the other day, and he talked about when he left his family team and went to Hendrick Motorsports, is the first time that he learned the preparation that it actually takes to be a champion. And I think people need to hear this, because people are just like, oh, someone's gonna come to me and just sign me and bring me along. And it's like, no, you need to constantly call. You need to have Felicia's. Felicia, what was her name?
Felicia, man.
Yeah.
I can remember her, but because she's instrumental in Angelle's story. And I don't know if Angelle remembers her like I do, but this girl, she had tears in her eyes when she talked to me in person, face to face, and she said, please give this girl a chance. I'll take responsibility. And I said, okay. So let me tell you this. Jackie, Bryce, and I were always two people that believe that you find the right woman, she could do the job. That's like in the towers, in the staging. Jackie is an all-star at running drag races. She had her own series. She commanded 300 racers on an all-day Saturday event for 10 years. She probably had 5 races a year. And her and Doug Frierson ran this series called Cinder Series. And during that time, she was the boss lady. And I like that part of a woman being strong. And when you could get a little, this little bantam hen, she was a dynamo. Angelle was, what did the lady that built her leathers for her first leather she built her? She says, okay, who came up with these measurements? These are not right. And I said, Jackie measured her. Jackie has everything right on the measurements. And she says, it's a miniature Barbie doll. Where'd y'all, and I said, she's going to be the Cajun bottle rocket. I mean, she's just going to be fast. And anyway, it took off. She became famous. She left me behind, but we got 8 good years out of her. We got, let's see, 30 national events, 3 world championships. We had the Winston thing that was so great. It was part of history. And I mean, we got a national series sponsor to join a bike team for the first and only time. And, you know, a lot of history there. And each piece, you know, has its part in making the history of the thing. I mean, her running the Army bike. And I want to say one thing about Angelle. And I know we prepared her and we created this opportunity for her. And she really does do well with coaching. And I think her new gig with Antron being her coach, I think she'll do good with that. But her ability to withstand the pressure when she was in her prime, there was nobody that I would put on the line with a Fortune 200 company painted on her back, and all 16 or 20 people that were involved in that category. I mean, the company that had Secret Service radios and tower personnel and all on the starting line and all this, she handled it with precision. And she was so precise. She could cut a light. She could do well. I got a radio. Winston got us a radio so I could talk to her on the bike. And I would coach her while she was staging. I knew when to be quiet, and I knew when she needed some help. When I would see her holding her breath, I would say, I mean, like this voice from above in her helmet would say, breathe, right when she needed to, and stuff like that, you know. And when she went to the Army team, who could go to the starting line and win on a pro stock motorcycle and cut a good light with the U.S. Army and 100 soldiers standing at your back? I mean, these guys now, they don't know what pressure is. They couldn't even carry her purse back in the day.
Yeah. I mean, also, and not just the sponsor stuff, but like we mentioned, she was one of the first females. Like she was. Oh. If she failed, the whole thing would have failed. Like any / most female drivers now. I mean, other than obviously Shirley Muldowney, but that was like the new revolution. I will tell you what. Unfortunately, we on my side here, we got to the top of the hour, and I got to get going. I think we're gonna have to have a George Bryce part 2. What do you think?
I'm good for it. Hey, you just got to get the people to click the buttons and tell you so, you know.
How about that? Let's because I think there's just that one. There's so much more story that there is to get out of you, and then so much more advice, and so I thank you for the way that you told the story and put some advice and just the history making that you made. It's been an honor to have you on the show.
Thank you very much. I'm blessed by God to have all these opportunities and all this stuff, and to be here. I'll be here today to tell the story. So I like sharing history. Thank you very much.
Well, yeah, you're welcome. I love hearing history, and I love I just love it. This is my favorite. Well, thank you guys here for being a part, I guess, of my favorite. Really love, like I said, educating, inspiring, history making, putting this whole thing into perspective, having people like Mr. George Bryce come on and tell you what it really, really, really takes. So we'll see you again next week here on The Racing Business. Love you guys. Bye.